The USS Panay Incident on December 12, 1937, was a Japanese bombing attack on the U.S. Navy river gunboat Panay and 3 Standard Oil Company tankers on the Yangtze River. They strafed survivors in the water. The boats were rescuing U.S. and Chinese civilians fleeing from Japanese invaders attacking Nanking, now spelled Nanjing, China. Japan and the United States were not at war at the time. Public reaction was mixed in the U.S., with the president weighing various diplomatic and military responses only to settle for an apology and compensation. The Japanese claimed that they did not see the U.S. flags painted on the deck of the gunboat. Tokyo officially apologized, and paid a cash indemnity. The settlement mollified some of the U.S. anger, and newspapers called the matter closed. This is History Uncovered, bringing you historical events and their truth. A little background. A flat-bottomed craft built in Shanghai specifically for river duty, Panay served as part of the U.S. Navy's Yangtze Patrol in the Asiatic Fleet, which was responsible for patrolling the Yangtze River to protect American lives and property in China. After invading China in the summer of 1937, Japanese forces moved into Nanking, now known as Nanjing, in December, where they later committed the massacre in the city that resulted in the deaths of 300,000 civilians and prisoners of war. Panay evacuated the remaining Americans from the city on December 11, bringing the number of people aboard to 5 officers, 54 enlisted men, 4 U.S. Embassy staff, and 10 civilians, including Universal Newsreel cameraman Norman Alley, Movietone News Eric Mail, The New York Times' Norman Song, Collier's Weekly correspondent Jim Marshall, La Stampa correspondent Sandro Sandri and Corriere della Sera correspondent Luigi Barzini Jr. The start of an unexpected event. On the morning of the 12th, the Japanese Air Forces received information that fleeing Chinese forces were in the area in 10 large steamers and a large number of junks, and that they were between 12 and 25 miles, 19 and 40 kilometers, upstream from Nanking. While anchored upstream from Nanking, Panay and 3 Standard Oil tankers, Mei Ping, Mei In, and Mei Xia, came under attack from Japanese naval aircraft. Panay was hit by 2 of the 18 132 pounds, 60 kilograms, bombs dropped by 3 Yokosuka B-4 YTYPE-96 bombers and strafed by 9 Nakajima A-4 N-Type 95 fighters. According to Lieutenant J.W. Geist, an officer aboard Panay, the day before we told the Japanese army in the area who we were, and 3 U.S. flags were plainly visible on the ship. Planes also machine-gunned small boats taking the wounded ashore, and several additional survivors were wounded. The Times correspondent Colin MacDonald, who had also been aboard Panay, saw a Japanese Army small boat machine-gun the Panay as it was sinking in spite of the American flag painted on the side of the ship. Since Japanese planes continued to circle overhead, survivors cowered knee-deep in mud in a swamp. Panay's lifeboats were machine-gunned by Japanese fighter planes in the attack. As a result of the attack, Panay sank. Storekeeper First Class Charles Lee Ensminger, Standard Oil tanker Captain Carl H. Carlson and Italian reporter Sandro Sandri were killed. Coxswain Edgar C. Hulsbus died later that night. 43 sailors and 5 civilians were wounded. The painful aftermath. The aftermath of the Panay sinking was a nervous time for the American ambassador to Japan, Joseph C. Grew. Grew, whose experience in the Foreign Service spanned over 30 years, remembered the Maine, the U.S. Navy ship that blew up in Havana Harbor in 1898. The sinking of Maine had propelled the U.S. into the Spanish-American War, and Grew hoped the sinking of Panay would not be a similar catalyst for the severance of diplomatic ties and war with Japan. The Japanese government took full responsibility for sinking Panay but continued to maintain that the attack had been unintentional. Chief of Staff of Japanese Naval Forces in northern China, Vice Admiral Rokuzo Sugiyama, was assigned to make an apology. The formal apology reached Washington, D.C. on Christmas Eve. Although Japanese officials maintained that their pilots never saw any American flags on Panay, a U.S. Navy court of inquiry determined that several U.S. flags were clearly visible on the vessel during the attacks. At the meeting held at the American Embassy in Tokyo on December 23, Japanese officials maintained that one Navy airplane had attacked a boat by machine gun for a short period of time and that Japanese Army motorboats or launchers had been attacking the Chinese steamers escaping upstream on the opposite bank. However, the Japanese Navy insisted that the attack had been unintentional. The Japanese government paid an indemnity of $2,214,007.36 to the U.S. on April 22, 1938. Officially settling the Panay Incident, $42,620,000 in 2023. The 3 Standard Oil tankers were also bombed and destroyed, and the captain of Mayan and many Chinese civilian passengers were killed. The vessels had been helping to evacuate the families of Standard Oil's employees and agents from Nanking during the Japanese attack on that city. 2 newsreel cameramen were aboard during the attack, Norman Alley of Universal News and Eric Mail of Movietone News. They were able to film part of the attack and, after reaching shore, the sinking of the ship in the middle of the river. Survivors were later taken aboard the American vessel Oahu and the British gunboats HMS Ladybird and B. Earlier the same day, a Japanese shore battery had fired on Ladybird. Stories of tar survivors. The survivors coped with near-freezing nights in inadequate clothing and with no food. It took 3 days to move the 16 wounded to the safety of several British and American ships. Modern historians believe that the attack may have been intentional. According to John Prados, Navy cryptographers had intercepted and decrypted traffic relating to the attacking planes, which clearly indicated that they were under orders during the attack and that it had not been a mistake of any kind. This information was not released at the time because it would have revealed that the United States had broken Japanese naval codes. Writer Nick Sparks believes that the chaos in Nanking created an opportunity for renegade factions within the Japanese army who wanted to force the US into an active conflict so that the Japanese could once and for all drive the US out of China. Thank you for watching. We hope you learned a lot about the USS Panay Incident. Don't forget to subscribe if you're interested in learning more about the true side of history. See you soon on another video.